So we'll move on to implementation of Senate Bill 1440. Is that you too, Eric?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And if I could, I'd invite the Academic Senate President Michelle Plotty to join me. Again, I think this will be a fairly brief update, but it's the board has requested a standing item on SB 1440, just to make sure we're staying on track, and I'm happy to report that we are. Since your last meeting, the chancellor sent a memo out to the field, addressed to the chief executive officers, the CIOs, the chief instructional officers, and the local academic senate presidents, just reiterating the importance of SB 1440, the transfer guarantee, and highlighting the great potential that those degrees have for our students in terms of helping them transfer more seamlessly to CSU and to receive enrollment priority and in that system and admission priority based on having that degree. So there's some real tangible benefits our students get. And lastly, in the memo from the chancellor, he really plugged the need for our local districts to go ahead and continue developing those degrees, those new degrees, and building them out. And so I think you've got a handout that should have been on your table earlier, the color landscape form. So this is, again, part of the standing update, and you'll see that now, at this point in time, if you look at the very bottom, we've got 420 degrees that have been approved by the chancellor's office, and we've got about another 120 or so that are in some stage of development, either being reviewed in the chancellor's office, or most of them are being developed locally and reviewed locally. So I think we're on our way to having a kind of a critical mass of these degrees in place. One last thing I wanted to know, then I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and she's going to add her perspective as well. I was just going to say, if you look at the bottom of this display, we've added a new feature, which is the line. So this is on the very bottom of the table, and there's a line. It's the three bottom rows. The first is total approved. That speaks to the numbers of community college degrees approved. And then the bottom two lines deal with CSU, and this is the portion of the display where we talk about CSU honoring these degrees. So each of the local CSU campuses, a step in this process is for them to look at the 1440 degrees and make a determination that yes, indeed, the model curriculum around this degree is similar to the program that we offer at our campus. And so this is really them unlocking their door and saying we're going to honor this degree for students to come through. And so it's vitally important. This is really CSU's side of the equation, and it's critically important that they live up to their part of the obligation, and that's what these bottom two lines are all about. And so if you look across the board, it's actually pretty heartening. You see that so what you'll see is kind of think about it as a ratio that so within the say I'll just take that example of the administration of justice, of the 15 CSUs with similar programs. So only of the 15 CSUs that have criminal justice on at their campus, all 15 have honored this transfer model curricula as similar to their program. And so again, you think of it as a ratio of the bottom line being the total possible, and the second to last being the number achieved. So for instance, under communication studies, of the 21 CSU campuses that have communication studies, 20 have deemed this transfer model curriculum as similar. So there's, we're achieving a pretty high level of CSU honoring these degrees, and we'll keep on working on them to get those numbers to being 100%. You'll notice two of them that really kind of stand out as being kind of lagging behind are in early childhood education, where only 16 of 19 programs have deemed the degrees as similar, and likewise in kinesiology, only 14 of 20 have deemed them as similar. And I think there's a pattern with these degrees in that there's a fair amount of differentiation across programs. So, like, for instance, and Michelle might have perspective on this, but within, say, early childhood education, there's kind of a research track that some programs take, and then there's another track that's much more applied. Likewise, in kinesiology, you've got a track that's kind of, more kind of hands-on health sciences, and then another track that gets tracks up into kind of higher-end research. And perhaps that's part of the difficulty, but one way or the other, we need to kind of break through there. And I see
education, like an early childhood education, and maybe a child development TMC, to recognize that divergence. Similarly, a kinesiology, and I believe was a physiological sciences or something along those lines, to recognize that divergency. So we've addressed that, and we looked at a number of other disciplines that where the numbers seem to be lacking, but those are the two that stood out, and they stand out when you look at the numbers as disciplines where we kind of need to go back to the table and revisit those. So we actually have decided to do that. Not much is happening because it is summer, but we're still coming together and trying to figure things out. So I'm presenting next on things related to 1440. Asked for the folder to go ahead and be distributed because one of the things that supports all the work of 1440 is the course identification numbering system that was in place before this work started and really allowed us exactly where we are at with 1440, pointing out that we're at 20 TMCs, which I think is where we were at last time we spoke, but we're also looking at having 4 more that are likely to be approved by the end of the month when we meet. We're actually meeting next week, and the 4 additional ones that we're looking at are anthropology, computer science, philosophy, and Spanish. We may have also spoken about one of the challenge with the science degrees being all those sequenced courses that you have to take for the sciences, plus the general education, and there had been discussion about having an alternative general education pattern for the sciences. We just got news today that UC formally approved that sort of alternative plan, so we're 2/3 along the way of having that be an option for students in those particular disciplines. We're looking at we've tentatively scheduled what the next disciplines we're going to be working on are going to be, and are looking at what happens to those disciplines that we haven't identified, and how can we bring them into the system so that there can also be this statewide pattern, so that you can take that 1 degree and go to, if not all the CSUs that have that major, most of them. Numbers are getting better every time, and that's really been quite encouraging, and we're hearing about CSUs actually modifying their curriculum so that they can make it work with these degrees for students. So the forward progress really is continuing. And one of the things that our sort of next step is helping counselors to talk to students about these degrees, and that's where a lot of our energies are going right now. So.
I'd say I'm actually really delighted to see this because it really looks like it's starting to pick up. If you look at the numbers just between our last meeting and this meeting, you can tell it's really starting to go. So congratulations on that. Questions from board members? Member McDougall.
Yeah, I'd just like to have a sense of what our objectives are for the system. For example, there are 23 programs across the top that CSU has. I would assume for some of our large transfer-oriented colleges, we would eventually like to see 23 agreements in place. Right now, the highest number we have is 10 for any single institution. And I would assume that even for our smaller institutions, that maybe a number of 10 or something such as that would be important. When will we feel we've arrived at this goal?
Well, the the goal that we're aiming towards is for each college should have a 1440 degree, so a associate degree for transfer in every major
Okay, that's the goal.
that they offer. And so what we're going to do on the next sheet, next time you'll see this, there'll be a similar to that ratio that I showed for CSU. Say, of the 21 campuses that offer it, 19 honor these degrees as similar. What we're going to do is we're going to establish a similar ratio for our community colleges. So saying for an individual college maybe has 12 of these programs that they have offer the associate's degree in that program area. So of those 12, how much coverage does that college have in terms of 1440 degrees? So they have 8 of the 12 covered. Okay, so then they've achieved 3/4, 75%. Now the goal is by fall of 2014 to have 100% coverage using that definition. So each college being to 100% of their programs having the 1440 option. That's
So
fall of
if I can restate just to see if I understood, that by 2014, that we'd like to see every community college that has a major that is aligned with the 23 majors that CSU has in place, that they would have an agreement for that major. Is that correct?
It's correct. The only slight modification I'd give is that the structure of this whole SB 1440 initiative, and this was really in a lot of ways the leadership of the Academic Senate in terms of coming up with this whole notion of the transfer model curriculum, and essentially we've negotiated a lot of this stuff at the statewide level. So an individual community college campus doesn't need to have an agreement with each CSU. But what happens is if the community college comes up with, if they build a degree that matches the TMC in a particular field, say psychology, then each of the CSU campuses will honor that TMC as well. So there aren't the individual negotiations between a college, a CSU, and a community college. It happens based on these common definitions that are derived in the TMC. So that's only a modification. I think that your characterization was spot on, and I would just give that little nuance there.
Yeah, by taking a statewide approach, where the agreements are happening is there's the TMC that's agreed upon by the faculty of the two segments, and then when a given CSU says, yes, we will take a degree that's aligned with that TMC, then individual colleges don't have to have agreements with that CSU. They just have to develop degrees that are aligned with the TMC. And by virtue of that degree then works for all the CSUs that have said they will take that degree.
Could you state that again? I'm not
Sure.
sure I got it. Maybe other board
Yeah.
members
Yeah.
did, but I did not.
Yeah, so we're developing these TMCs, transfer model curriculum, which says, if you, here's the agreed upon statewide major preparation for psychology. And there's some variations in there. It doesn't mean we're gonna have 112 colleges with the exact same degree. So the TMC is developed. Once it's developed, it goes to our chancellor's office so they can prepare to accept degrees that are aligned with it. And it goes to the CSU's chancellor's office, and the CSU chancellor's office then pushes it out to all the psychology departments at each of the CSUs and they ask them, can you get a student with a degree that looks like this through in 60 units? And if they say yes, that is then a determination of similar. Then 112 community colleges can then create degrees that look like that TMC, that agreement, and when they create a degree that is aligned with that, by virtue of that, they have that sort of simplified pathway into all of the CSUs that have said the TMC is similar.
That's terrific, yeah.
So it's a
Thank
sort
you.
of one-to-many relationship that simplifies the process for everybody.
Sure.
Okay, any other board member comments? Thank you all for the great work. Okay, I am informed by our board liaison and our chief technology and sound engineer, and Jerry, that we need to take about a 10-minute break to set up some technology for our next presentation. So let's return in 10 minutes.